Judge Michael Richardson adjusts his wire-rimmed glasses in his chambers at the Brooklyn Federal Court, the morning sunlight streaming through tall windows onto decades of leather-bound law books. At 52, he's earned his reputation as one of New York's most respected judges, known for his careful consideration of each case that crosses his bench. His morning docket seems routine until he reaches the file of Kevin Turner, age 25, charged with stealing medical supplies from Brighton Memorial Hospital. The young man's background gives Richardson pause. Honor student at Brooklyn Tech, full scholarship to NYU, dropped out in his final year to care for his grandmother. No prior record, not even a parking ticket. The security footage shows Turner methodically selecting specific items: wound care supplies, diabetes testing kits, blood pressure monitors, not the usual target for theft. As the bailiff calls the case, Richardson studies Turner's entrance into the courtroom. Despite the handcuffs and orange jumpsuit, Turner carries himself with quiet dignity. Their eyes meet briefly, and Richardson sees something hauntingly familiar. The same determined look he once wore as a young man from the Bronx, fighting against circumstances beyond his control. The evidence presentation is methodical. The prosecution highlights the calculated nature of the theft, the value of the stolen goods exceeding $50,000. Turner's public defender speaks of his client's character, his volunteer work at local nursing homes, his role as sole caretaker for his grandmother. Turner himself speaks softly, but clearly when addressed, taking full responsibility while trying to explain circumstances the law has little room to consider. Richardson listens intently, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. 20 years on the bench have taught him to read between the lines of every case, to sense the untold stories beneath legal arguments. Something about Turner's case nags at him, but the law is unambiguous. The minimum sentence for grand larceny of medical supplies is 3 years. As Richardson delivers the sentence, he notices Turner's slight nod of acceptance. No outburst, no plea for leniency. Just that same determined look, now tinged with resignation. For reasons Richardson can't fully explain, this case would follow him home that night, leading to a decision that would change both their lives forever. 6 weeks after sentencing Kevin Turner, Judge Richardson arrives at his chambers on a crisp autumn morning. Among the usual stack of legal briefs and court documents, a plain white envelope catches his eye. The return address reads Betty Turner, 1247 Ocean Avenue, Brooklyn. The handwriting is shaky but determined, each letter carefully formed. Richardson opens the envelope carefully, unfolding 3 pages of lined paper filled with neat, if unsteady, cursive. Dear Judge Richardson, it begins, I hope you can forgive an old woman for writing to you about my grandson, Kevin. As he reads, the bustling sounds of the courthouse fade away. Betty Turner's words paint a vivid picture of their life together. A retired schoolteacher, she'd raised Kevin since he was 4 after losing both parents in a car accident. She writes of his dedication to his studies, working part-time jobs throughout high school to help with bills, and his dream of becoming a nurse after watching the care his mother received in her final days. Then came her heart condition, the insurance company's denial of coverage, the mounting bills from her home care needs, Kevin's desperate choice to steal the very supplies he'd learned about in his nursing courses. I didn't know what he was doing, she writes. If I had, I would have stopped him. Better to leave this world and see him lose his future trying to extend mine. Richardson's hands tremble slightly as he reaches the letter's end. The words blur before his eyes as he remembers his own grandmother, Margaret, who worked 2 jobs to raise him after his father went to prison. The sacrifice of one generation for another, a story as old as time. He sits in his leather chair, the letter spread before him, as the morning sun inches across his desk. The case file for Kevin Turner sits in his cabinet, officially closed. But Richardson knows this story isn't finished. That night, lying awake in his bedroom, an unprecedented idea begins to form, one that will challenge everything he knows about justice and redemption. Judge Richardson stands at the window of his corner office, watching morning traffic flow across the Brooklyn Bridge. His phone screen shows 7 missed calls from his wife Lisa, concerned about what she calls his midnight revelation. After 30 years of marriage, she knows when something has taken root in his mind. The elevator dings, and prison director Amanda Williams strides into his office, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Your message said it was urgent, Michael," she says, settling into a chair. "What's so important it couldn't wait for our monthly meeting?" Richardson takes a deep breath, turning from the window. "I want to spend 24 hours in the facility," he says quietly. "As an inmate, same cell block as Kevin Turner." Williams' coffee cup freezes halfway to her lips. In 15 years running the facility, she's never heard such a request. "You want to what?" Over the next hour, Richardson outlines his proposal, a first-hand experience program, starting with himself, to help judges understand the full impact of their sentences. He's prepared for every objection. Security protocols, liability issues, precedent concerns. His research is thorough, citing similar programs in Norway and Germany. "This could end your career," Williams warns, but there's a glimmer of interest in her eyes. She's known for her innovative rehabilitation programs, and this could be groundbreaking. "Or it could change how we think about justice," Richardson counters, sliding across a detailed proposal document. By afternoon, word spreads through the courthouse. Richardson's clerk, Jenny Martinez, overhears whispers in the cafeteria. A reporter from the New York Post catches wind of the story, leaving 3 voicemails. Judge Thompson from the 3rd floor stops by, questioning Richardson's sanity. But by day's end, Williams calls back. "The board approved it," she says, "with conditions. We'll need to coordinate with the guards, set up protocols." "And Michael?" She pauses. "This better work." Richardson looks at Betty Turner's letter on his desk, then at Kevin's case file. "It has to," he replies softly. At 6:00 a.m. sharp, Richardson stands in the prison's intake area, his heart pounding beneath his plain white t-shirt. Officer Pete Martinez, a veteran guard with salt and pepper hair and steady hands, watches him empty his pockets. Wedding ring, watch, wallet. Each item clicks against the plastic tray with finality. "Protocol is protocol, Your Honor," Martinez says quietly, handing over an orange jumpsuit. "Even for you." There's no mockery in his voice, just professional detachment. Richardson appreciates that more than any special treatment. The transformation is methodical. Fingerprinting. Mugshot. The rough fabric of prison-issued clothing against his skin. Richardson catches his reflection in the brushed metal mirror. Without his suit and glasses, he looks oddly vulnerable. Martinez leads him through a series of heavy doors, each clang echoing through empty corridors. "General populations at breakfast," Martinez explains, his keys jingling. "Director Williams thought it best you arrive during mealtime. Less dramatic." He pauses before the final door. Word of advice. "The inmates will test you. Not with fists, but they'll watch every move. Be yourself. They can spot fake from a mile away." The cafeteria falls silent as Richardson enters. 200 pairs of eyes turn toward him, spoons frozen midway to mouths. At the far table, Kevin Turner's fork clatters against his tray. The young man's face cycles through confusion, disbelief, and something like apprehension. Richardson feels the weight of every step as he moves through the food line. Powdered eggs, toast, coffee in a plastic cup. The routine is surreal. He'd sentenced people to years of these moments without ever knowing their texture. He spots an empty seat at a table with 3 other inmates. One, an older man with reading glasses and a chess set made from folded paper, nods slightly. Richardson sits, feeling the hard plastic of the chair, the sticky surface of the table, the watchful gazes from all directions. "Bold move, Judge," the man with the chess set says quietly. "Question is, are you here to observe us, or to understand us?" The question hangs in the air as Richardson takes his first bite of prison breakfast. The prison's night shift brings a different kind of quiet, punctuated by distant doors and the soft shuffle of guard rotations. Richardson sits at a metal table in a common area, watching as James Miller, the older inmate with the paper chess set, carefully arranges his handcrafted pieces. "Took me 3 months to get them right," Miller explains, smoothing a paper knight. "Time's the one thing we've got plenty of in here." A former high school teacher serving 5 years for fraud, Miller has become the unofficial mentor to younger inmates. Kevin Turner approaches hesitantly, drawn by the growing crowd around the chess match. Richardson gestures to an empty seat, and Kevin slowly sinks into it. The tension between them crackles like static electricity. "Your grandmother wrote to me," Richardson says softly, moving a pawn. Miller pretends to be absorbed in the game, giving them privacy while staying within sight of the guards. Kevin's fingers trace patterns on the metal table. "She shouldn't have done that. She carries enough guilt already." He pauses, watching Richardson's moves. "Did you know the supplies I took? They were exactly what she needed. I learned about them in nursing school. Funny how education works both ways." Around them, other inmates drift closer. Marcus Wright, a young father inside for a nonviolent offense, shares how he reads bedtime stories to his daughter through weekly phone calls. Thomas Parker, an accountant who made one desperate choice, describes teaching math to fellow inmates preparing for their GED. As midnight approaches, the conversations deepen. Kevin reveals his nightly ritual, studying medical terms from a worn textbook, refusing to let his dream die. "Every supply I took, I knew its purpose, its proper use. Maybe that makes it worse, but I couldn't watch her suffer knowing I could help." Richardson listens, really listens, hearing the stories beneath the stories. The chess game long forgotten, he realizes that each man here carries a similar weight, the complex intersection of choice, circumstance, and consequence. "Checkmate," Miller announces quietly, though no one remembers whose turn it was. Outside, a passing train whistle echoes through the concrete walls, a reminder of the world beyond these walls. At 5:30 a.m., the harsh fluorescent lights flicker on without warning. Richardson startles awake on his thin mattress, his back stiff from the metal frame. The sounds of prison morning fill the air, the squeak of boots on linoleum, metal doors sliding open, distant voices calling out numbers for roll call. "Rise and shine, gentlemen," Officer Martinez announces, his keys jingling as he makes his rounds. Richardson watches Kevin across the corridor, already sitting up, running through medical terminology flashcards he's made from torn paper, even here, pursuing his dream. The morning routine unfolds like a well-rehearsed play. Richardson joins the line for the shared bathroom, feeling the cold floor through prison-issued slip-on shoes. The mirror shows dark circles under his eyes, his usual clean-shaven face now showing stubble. A young inmate named Michael Foster offers him a spare toothbrush. "First night's the hardest," Foster says quietly. "Gets easier when you stop counting the hours." He's 22, Richardson learns, arrested for stealing baby formula for his newborn daughter. Another story that never made it into the pre-sentencing report. At breakfast, Richardson notices details he missed yesterday. The way inmates share extra portions with those who look hungry. The informal support system for newcomers. The small acts of dignity preserved despite the circumstances. Straightened collars, carefully combed hair. Please and thank you still matter here. Kevin sits nearby, his medical notes spread beside his breakfast tray. "My grandmother," he says suddenly, "she used to quiz me on anatomy terms while she cooked Sunday dinner." His voice catches. "Sometimes I dream I'm back there, but I'm wearing scrubs instead of this jumpsuit." Richardson thinks about the sentences he's handed down over the years. Each number represented years of moments like these: missed Sunday dinners, cold mornings, small kindnesses between strangers. The law's black and white certainty feels different in the gray dawn of prison light. As the sun rises outside, painting strips of light through the high windows, Richardson realizes his legal education never taught him what 24 hours behind bars would reveal. Sometimes justice needs to see its own reflection in the mirror stubble and all. 1 month after his night in prison, Judge Richardson's courtroom looks different. Gone is the imposing wooden bench, replaced by a setup that brings him closer to eye level with defendants. The changes raise eyebrows among his colleagues, but Richardson hasn't come this far to stop now. Today, he's introducing the Second Look program to a packed courtroom. News cameras line the back wall, and Betty Turner sits in the front row, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Director Williams stands near the door, arms crossed, watching with careful optimism. The law must serve justice, Richardson begins, his voice steady. But justice must serve humanity. He outlines the program. First-time offenders will have access to medical resource coordinators, vocational training, and education programs. Cases involving medical necessity will receive special consideration. In the audience, Judge Thompson shakes his head slightly. He's gone soft, he whispers to another colleague. But Richardson continues, describing partnerships with local hospitals for medical training programs, arrangements with technical schools, mentorship opportunities. Kevin Turner becomes the program's first participant, appearing via video link from prison. He's already enrolled in a distance learning nursing program, his textbooks spread before him. "Your Honor," he says, his voice clear through the speakers, "I want to thank you." "No thanks needed," Richardson interrupts gently. "Just promise to help the next person who needs it. Legally this time." Quiet laughter ripples through the courtroom. By day's end, Richardson's phone won't stop ringing. Judges from Miami to Seattle want details. The New York Times is running a front-page story. His inbox fills with emails from families of inmates, sharing stories similar to the Turners. Late that evening, as Richardson packs up his briefcase, Officer Martinez stops by. "You really stirred things up, Your Honor," he says, leaning against the doorframe. "Got 3 other judges asking to do their own overnight stays." Richardson smiles, touching the rough spot on his chin where prison stubble had grown. "Sometimes," he says, picking up Betty Turner's letter from his desk, "you have to spend a night in darkness to see where the light needs to shine." The graduation ceremony at Brooklyn Memorial Hospital's nursing school takes place in a sunlit auditorium. Kevin Turner, now in crisp blue scrubs, stands among his fellow graduates. His early release for exemplary behavior and program participation came 6 months ago, but he chose to keep wearing his ID badge from the prison's medical training program alongside his new hospital credentials, a reminder of where his journey began. Betty Turner sits in the front row, oxygen tank beside her chair, tears gleaming in her eyes. The medical supplies her grandson once stole are now provided through a new healthcare initiative born from the Second Look program. Behind her, Judge Richardson slips quietly into a back row seat, not wanting to steal focus from Kevin's moment. The ceremony program lists Kevin as a speaker. He approaches the podium, his voice steady as he addresses the crowd. 2 years ago, I made a choice born of desperation, he begins. Today, I make a different choice, to heal rather than hurt, to serve rather than take. Richardson watches as Kevin describes the night that changed both their lives, how a chess game in prison led to a revolution in judicial thinking. Across the country, 15 judges have now completed overnight stays in their jurisdictions. 3 states have adopted modified versions of the Second Look program. After the ceremony, Kevin finds Richardson near the refreshment table. They shake hands, no longer judge and defendant, but 2 men who discovered humanity in an unexpected place. "I have my first shift in the emergency room next week," Kevin says, pride evident in his voice. "Your grandmother's heart surgery is scheduled for next month." Richardson asks. Kevin nods. "I'll be assisting in the recovery ward." Full circle, right? As they talk, a young reporter approaches, notebook in hand. She's writing a feature on rehabilitation success stories. "Judge Richardson," she asks, "did you know that night would change so many lives?" Richardson looks at Kevin, now explaining proper wound care techniques to his grandmother. He thinks of the chess set still sitting in his chambers, Miller's paper piece is preserved as a reminder. No, he answers honestly. But I learned that justice, like healing, begins with seeing the whole person, not just their worst moment. Outside, the Brooklyn sunset paints the hospital windows gold, a different kind of prison light, one that promises healing instead of confinement.